All right, let's take a quick look now at the markets. The local market, a little earlier, before close, about 0.2% in the red. And they've been depressed globally markets as well because, again, in part, it's those inflation worries. Miners taking a heavy hit today with those heavyweights, NASPAS and Process, also in the red. David Shapiro is from SASFIN. He joins us now. David, thanks for your time. I mean, this high inflation, many have pointed out that, look, Europe is going through this as well and other parts of the world. So we see this playing out in the markets because markets don't like inflation. But the point is, it's not just South Africa, is it? Or is there something peculiar about our inflation?
I think, Devin, while the rest of the world is starting to get on top of inflation, we're still finding inflation very, very sticky here. So European inflation was down, although the core number, which is the one that economists are watching or central bankers are watching a lot more carefully, is holding its own. So, you know, the issues that came through supply chain, through the war and all the other transitory elements, I think all of those are starting to play out and bring prices down. But it is the wages, it is the services levels, I think, that are worrying people. But given we're higher than we should be, you know, and I think I didn't hear what Davy said, but I think a lot of structural issues in our economy, particularly around load shedding, around, you know, some other government services, I think just keeping the levels elevated.
Yeah. Just, you know, on the market front, I mean, this oil price down, you know, I'm wondering what's behind that, because when you see this oil price down, you think two things. Well, is the world economy not turning enough? But on the other hand, you know, good for us petrol and fuel users here, as long as it's sustained in that downward trajectory. What's your take on the oil price today?
Well, that's the interesting part, because, you know, OPEC have now decided to cut production by quite a significant amount in the hope of actually keeping prices level. But it does reflect perhaps slowing inflation. The one area where we expected it to go up, with the Chinese economy performing better than it did, one would have thought that the oil prices would have picked up. But they're hovering around the 80 level, you know, both Brent and WTI, which I think is slightly better than we thought. The big problem, though, Devin, is that things do start to pick up, and we're all hoping that they do. The oil price could be the outside factor that keeps inflation ticking over and up. So it's a balancing act. You know, it's not easy to draw a line through all the numbers that we're getting and come out with an easy to understand conclusion. A lot of uncertainty still in the markets.
Yeah, not too much company news today, but what I found interesting was this annual report by Exxaro Resources today. They're making the point that they want to shed their reliance on embattled Transnet for transporting their coal. Now, I would imagine that's not the only company with that ambition, but I'm wondering what the alternatives are for the broader mining fraternity, because this Transnet thing really has put such a suffocating sheet over what's happening in that industry in particular.
I interpret that they want to privatize the user railway lines, obviously, but naturally bring in their own trucks and transport and so on, be responsible for, they can rent the lines, you know, they still have to fix up the infrastructure, make sure that the signals work and there's power to drive the engines. But I would take it, they can't dismiss or rail transport, but I do think they probably want to take control, which I think is going to be shared by a lot of other miners. And that was hinted to by the president. I think this is the way that things are going, not only transport, but electricity as well. This is the big call, to privatize those and hand them over to maybe private partnerships, which I think everybody would look forward to. Those are the two areas where I think it was even Anglo-American called for something similar to that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, that's all the time we have, David. Well, thanks. I mean, David Shapiro from SASFIN, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.